These things are bigger than any one company, bigger than any one government can address, but we all have our own part to play in that. And I think that's the way I like to think about it. I have 2 young daughters that are going to live in this world long after me, hopefully. And I want to see the world be a place that they can thrive in. That's quite frankly one of the things that drives me and what I do in geospatial and Earth observation.
Hey SpaceWatchers, and welcome back here from Frankfurt. It's the last day of InterGeo and I have the absolute pleasure to talk to someone I met 2 years ago when he was just fresh in his job. And I'm talking about Addison, the Executive Director of WGIC, what stands for the World Geospatial Industry Council. Aaron, how are you doing today?
Thank you. It's great to be with you again. It's always nice to see a friendly face and always enjoy our conversations.
Friendly faces these days are rare, but happy to deliver one of them.
Yeah.
Aaron, tell me, 2 years in the job now. What happened in the 2 years? How did the organization change, grew? We have a lot of things going on geopolitical during these 2 years that might have an effect on it. Geospatial is on the rise and for all the geopolitical topics that are ongoing, but how does it reflect in your organization?
I think it's changed substantially. It's changed on the technical front. 2 years ago, nobody knew what ChatGPT was. And even more recently, as you alluded to, with some of the geopolitical dynamics, I hear terms like data sovereignty more and more. That wasn't part of the model. That wasn't part of the discussion in the way that it is now, even a year ago. So I think we're seeing rapid change, both on the hardware, on the software, but largely on the policies, and really not so much how much data can I collect, but what do I want to do with that data? So I think we're seeing that dynamic change, continue to see new entrants into the Earth observation market in particular. We've started to think about Earth observation from the terrestrial all the way to space, and not one or the other, but a continuum of sensors that are starting to develop everybody knows about LiDAR on the ground, LiDAR from an airplane, but then things in the high atmosphere and things in low Earth orbit, things that are going into higher orbits for different purposes. So I think it's a very interesting time to explore the various sensors that are being developed. And I expect that's going to continue for the foreseeable future.
Okay, there are a few questions that come with it, especially with the sensors that I have on my list. But tell me more about the organization on its core. So have you been able to grow it? Have you steered the direction or pivoted the direction due to the given market conditions? So tell us more about that.
We continue to grow WGIC. We grow at a rate of 20 to 30% per year. And that's a mix of large, well-established companies, more mature companies in the space, but also a lot of startups in our associate member category. Well, I'm not able to announce it quite yet, but we'll have some more significant announcements around memberships that are joining WGIC. I think for me, what I've observed even within the last year is I think the community and the council is more important now than maybe it's ever been before.
Why is that?
Precisely because of some of the uncertainties at the global level. I think if you listen closely to the leadership of many of the geospatial and Earth observation companies, there's even an open acknowledgement that the problems that we face, the challenges that we face, be them climate related, the built environment, et cetera, they're all bigger than one company can tackle. It's just not possible for one company to solve all the dimensions of some of these challenges. And so there is really an acknowledgement that there needs to be platforms, there needs to be a place for them to come together and speak with one voice. And that's WGIC.
So are there any new reports? You worked on this kind of reports or market analysis or over the last years. Are there new publications that you put out in the last year?
So we put out publications at a regular pace on a variety of topics, some of them quite technical, some of them more use case based. Just recently, we published a report with our partner, GCOM, the Global Covenant of Mayors, on how Earth observation and geospatial technology can be used at the local government level for climate topics. And that's an organization of over 13,000 mayors around the world that are looking for best practices and use cases on how to put all this technology to work. And so I think on the format, we like the white paper, we like the report, but we're also mindful that not everybody's downloading a PDF file to read. So that's a bit antiquated if you want to get your message out. And so one of the things...
Did you just say that downloading in PDF is a bit antiquated? I thought I'm on the edge of technologies, but are you telling me I'm old?
I'm telling you that there are technologies now that can take your PDF file and turn it into a podcast for you, right? And so what all that is to say that our goal is always to meet people where they're at, not where we wish they were at. And that may mean a variety of platforms, be it podcasts, be it YouTube videos, be it taking that content and making it more approachable and not so tucked away in the corners of our website or somewhere else where they have to really look for it. If we want to get that message out, then we need to really reflect regularly on how we're going about that in order to reach the audience that needs to hear that information.
Fair point. Let's dive a bit into trends that you and the organization saw in the last year, but seeing also in the days to come. So where are we on the geospatial?
So I think right now people are looking, I'm a fan of Einstein, and he has a quote that the essential feature of productive thought comes in combinatory play. It's not this or that. It's how you bring those pieces together. And I see a lot of work being done, whether it's in merging vector data to raster data, whether it's turning data into decision. That comes in many different flavors and formats. But what's baked into that, I think, and this is being accelerated by advancements in AI, is the data provenance of all of these data sets. It's okay. You put 4, 5, 10 data sets into an AI model and you got an output, but is that output valid? And it becomes a critical thinking exercise at that point on how we can really leverage that data in the right ways, not only to get the answers that we need, but also do that through an ethical lens.
Before we're talking about the trustworthiness of data, I remember earlier this year at the Geo in St. Louis, there was, for me, a breathtaking keynote from someone from OpenAI, talking about GeoAI. And she said, okay, we do it here on a live demo. And she's throwing a few pictures and then asked ChatGPT to say where that is. And that was, for the presentation, pretty remarkable, I would say. I tested it out. It didn't give similar results because maybe I didn't use her prompts. But on the detection side, it's one thing. But you mentioned trust in data. How can I reach this trust of data, especially in this correlation turn pixel into decisions, like you said before? So if I'm going to the extreme, or a picture for targeting, that is on the extreme side, but also if I'm taking a picture of a farmland and say, okay, it's ready to harvest from the sky, the question is, do I have to do that from above? But however, you see my point, there's a huge variety. So how can I trust data? Is Google Earth still a trusted?
Yes and no. Google Earth's an interesting example because we all definitively know that Google edits that imagery. They may clean up a roadway. They may remove a shadow. And so at what point have you passed trust barrier to say, okay, I'm not sure I trust this anymore? And that's a very interesting exercise because if you look at the first thing people do with maps is find my house. Why would you do that exercise? And that's actually a trust validation exercise because you know where your house is. And now you're checking up on this tool, on this data set to say, do you also know where my house is? And even as children, we do this. Every child puts 2 + 2 into a calculator at some point because they know what the answer to that question is. And they're building a trust relationship with that tool to say, okay, do you also know the answer to this question? And they build that trust over time so that whenever they put in something they can't do on their own, they have some reasonable expectation that the answer that they're getting out of that tool is correct. And so I think that coupled with critical thinking, trust but verify, the age-old research, there is where we need to be. I think that where the problems and the challenges start to creep in is whenever we're looking at the acceleration of data production through automation and through some of the tools that are available like ChatGPT and others. I'm not sure we have the framework yet to really review that data on the backside for the decision. And I think about that. If I put myself in the shoes of a decision maker, we don't even have to go to extreme examples, but let's just talk about coastal evacuations during a hurricane. If you're showing me imagery and you're telling me that the water's going to come up into these neighborhoods, like what was that based on? How did you determine that? Yeah. And that data provenance or that chain of custody throughout from sensor to decision really becomes a important piece of information Because if we can't provide that as geospatial and Earth observation professionals, why should the decision maker trust us? Why should they believe what we're showing them? Because it's a map? Because it's a photo? And so I think that discussion is going to continue to evolve. What's really interesting to me is that I think that remains a huge opportunity for a company or companies to investigate and differentiate on and do that really well, because that adds to the transparency.
I find that's an interesting thought track here. How can I, as a startup, position myself in this trusted environment? Because trust, as you just mentioned with the example of looking for my house or to pursue, is based on experience. Yeah, it grows over time. Okay, but it can also flip anytime. So everything we learned might be irrelevant at one stage. We all trusted in international partnership for decades. So, and question that today. Things can move that. But if I'm in demand as a governmental agency, as you say, or as a mayor of a city, in a coastal city, so how can I develop this trusted chain of delivery of a data set and then coming in as a new company in that? So how does that work?
I think there's a variety of ways that you can do that. I think understanding, another analogy that I oftentimes think about is the last mile problem. And that's basically, it's easy to get things from New York City to Frankfurt, Germany. It's more difficult to get them to a particular stand on the floor of the show. Or if you prefer a geographic analogy, there's an entire profession called harbor pilot, and they board tankers whenever they come into major ports around the world because they have intimate knowledge of the terrain and they pilot the vessel into dock. Where is that equivalent in the information intermediary, right? So we have these in other parts of society, and that's the good news, is that we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. No, we have financial intermediaries that we call banks. We trust the bank that they're doing things in the proper way. And there may be an opportunity, or there may be an emerging area of geospatial that is the geospatial intermediary that is brokering and vetting this data and providing an authentic image. And so another way to think about that in an AI context is, let's say I build an AI model that has 5 inputs and I run that model and it produces an output. But the AI maybe is agent-based and it tells me, it says, output 3 has a highly curated data sets available for $19. Would you like to insert that into your model, which is going to increase the quality of your output by 30%? And now you can make an informed decision of whether or not you want to improve your model based on a more highly curated data set in service of a better output.
How would you leverage the dynamics in that particular area, which are, again, government or federal organizations, however you want to call them, which are not known for moving fast? And here we need a fast adaptation to technology.
I think that's a very interesting point, because one of the things that we're starting to see around the world is a breakdown in the development of policy and guardrails around some of this technology, precisely because policy doesn't move fast. And one of the things I think that we have to reckon with sooner or later is a new model of how we want to create policy and guardrails for these types of technologies, because we're seeing that the old way of doing it, or the traditional way of doing it, simply doesn't work. And that's where I think you're seeing governments start to struggle with data sovereignty, for example, saying, oh, we're going to bring all of our data. It all has to stay in state, in country, in the region. And companies like AWS and others responding to that by opening data centers that are more local to the customers that they're trying to serve. And I'm sure this, as we know, ebbs and flows through our industry over time, but that's the direction things are headed now. There may be a time where that's more relaxed again, and different architectures and approaches to facilitate that and leverage that. But I think it's still going to depend on, I always think about things in service of what? We need a problem that we're solving. And that typically is compelled by a project owner, someone who pays the bills, right? So what is it they need? What is it they want? And that owner may be the government. It might be a developer. It might be an international agency. It might be an organization like ESA. There's all different kinds of organizations around that. But what is the need? What is it they need? And then the technology should be in service of that need. The policy should be in service of that need, not the other way around. And
you mentioned before that one goal of the organization is to tackle problems that are bigger than for one single company. And here you said, okay, who is the owner of a problem, of a challenge. And I think when we try to tackle problems like climate change, even it's not en vogue anymore, or others, how to bring in the owner here. Let's talk about cleaning space. Same thing. So how to bring in the people in charge of it and to pay for it at the end.
These are great examples that run a very real probability of running into the tragedy of the commons, that they think that someone else is going to take care of that problem for me. And so I think there has to be also these international organizations that are bringing not only companies and technology together, but also nations that are concerned about this. Because if we play that game out, especially in orbit, in low Earth orbit, you're looking at, I have to now plan into my satellite, into my sensor, a hardening factor so that it can take any damage that it might incur. And that's a game that just continues to escalate.
Mm.
And you have these tank hardened satellites that are flying around in low Earth orbit. And that's not sustainable, right? I think you have to see a change in that approach. And that really starts with communication, I think, is the starting point. And yeah, you're right. So these things are bigger than any one company, bigger than any one government can address, but we all have our own part to play in that. And I think that's the way I like to think about it. I have 2 young daughters that are going to live in this world long after me, hopefully. And I want to see that the world be a place that they can thrive in. That's quite frankly one of the things that drives me in what I do in geospatial and Earth observation.
Are there other technical trends that you see and you want to address? One thing I would have in mind are quantum sensors on air.
So I was fortunate to attend an invitation event earlier this year, and with some of the leading CTOs around the world with big companies. And I was going to say quantum. I was like, whatever you think about AI and how fast it's moved and how fast it's changed things, quantum, what would the analogy be? Quantum is to AI as AI is to traditional compute. And I think it's going to really change not only the way that data is processed, but one of the interesting comments that was made by someone was that we don't even know how to ask quantum questions yet. We don't know how to frame problems that are framed in such a way that a quantum computer could solve them. But the progress is much further along than I think most people realize. And it may start off in, say, pharmaceuticals and custom prescription drugs and design of drugs, particularly around things like antibiotics. But I think that moves quickly into other domains, and those domains are going to include geospatial and Earth observation.
Interesting. Very interesting. Anything to add? Anything you have on your heart you want to give to our audience?
No, I think it's great to catch up once a year with you and provide some of these updates. I really appreciate that. From our viewpoint, bringing people together has never been more important in our business and our industry, and doing that in service of solving problems and challenges that face our collective world. And so we're going to keep doing that. We believe that WGIC provides that voice for industry, not just on technical topics, but on data privacy, on diversity in the workforce, on climate. And that really speaks with power whenever you want to reach out, because our reports are referenced all the time, not only by our member companies, but also by governments, and say, hey, it's not just one company saying this. This is the entire industry body that's saying, that we should use these best practices.
That's the value of a trusted source.
Absolutely.
Aaron Addison, thank you very much for your time. It's a great pleasure to speak with you once in a while. And all the best, good luck, and see you soon.
My pleasure. Thank you.
With that, SpaceWatch out.
If you have further questions, reach out to us at radio@SpaceWatch.Global. If you like these or other episodes of Space Café Radio, leave us a rating on your preferred podcast platform. It is the currency of today. And if you want to stay on the pulse of the space industry, please visit our website at www.SpaceWatch.Global and subscribe to our newsletters. And of course, don't forget to become a Space Watcher. I'm Thorsten Triening, publisher at SpaceWatch.Global, your independent perspective on space.